Hello and welcome to Draw It and Know It, the Art Lesson Edition. I'm cartoonist Dan Letha for the Ministry Reasons for Hope. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the drawing of a T-Rex that I did for a video a couple days ago where I talk about Genesis chapter 1. So in today's T-Rex drawing, I'm going to kind of give you a play-by-play in a sense where I start out with a pencil line drawing here, very, very simple, very, very light lines. But these lines are very valuable because they're going to tell me exactly where to go with the ink lines that I'll be drawing later on. And so, in a sense, I'm kind of drawing a T-Rex skeleton in my mind, lightly telling me where the arms are going to be and how big the body is and where the legs are going to go and the tail's going to go and the shape of the head. And then once I've got those very general light sketchy lines down, that very light skeleton, then I can go in with lines that are much more specific, like these where the teeth are. So I drew where the jaws were going to be, and then based on that information, then I knew where the teeth were going to be. And so then the same is true for the legs and the other parts of this, where I've got, again, that very sketchy skeleton that I've started out with. And then that information allows me to be confident with the much more specific lines that are going to be very, very important then, because I'm going to be inking over the tops of those lines that look much closer to the finished product. So again, those light sketchy lines, which people usually treat as kind of a throwaway thing, are very, very valuable because that's what the whole thing is built on. Now, one thing that I want you to notice here is that I am not drawing with a pen. I am drawing with a brush. This is a pen brush, kind of a hybrid between the two. And a lot of artists, particularly in comic books, you'll notice that there are artists that will draw with brushes. And they've got these very, very fat, bold lines. And then they've got these very, very thin lines. And there's lines that start out thin and then they go very, very thick. And so a brush is very, very handy and well designed for doing that sort of line, because based upon the amount of pressure then that you apply to the brush, you can get it to start out very thin and then you can get it to end up very, very thick. And so with that type of a tool, you get some very, very dramatic and really cool looking lines. And so I love it a lot. It takes a bit of practice to learn how to use a tool like this, because I've seen some people try to use it and right away you want to use it like just kind of any other tool that you use. But one thing that I'll have you notice as I'm drawing these lines here is that I'm consciously making that tip drag. I'm dragging that tip. I'm not pushing into the tip of the brush. And that's very, very important, because if you push it, you'll get blobs and you'll get lines that you don't want. But if you drag that brush tip around, and I'm changing the angle of my hand as I'm drawing there, you can get it to start out very, very delicate and thin, exactly where you want it to be, and then you just apply more pressure and you can get that much fatter line, which again adds a lot of visual variety to this drawing. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But a lot of artists use brushes that you just get the brush and then you have an ink bottle on your table, and so you run the hazard of tipping that bottle over, and that's happened to me a few times, and that's a real mess. And so this pen brush here is very, very handy. You can take it with you and travel very easily, and you've got the convenience of taking the cap off, using the brush, and then when you're done with it, you put the cap back on, boom, you're done, off you go. And so you've got this this drawing now that I've done with this brush pen that has, like I said, these very, very thin lines and very, very thick lines. And one of the things I want you to notice about the thicker lines is that I tend to use those lines on the outside of the creature. And so the outside edges of the creature have much more thick and thin lines to them, where lines that are inside the body of the creature, say in between those two arms, you've got the neck lines and the shoulder, or like where the collarbone would be. Those lines are much thinner. And so the bold, thick lines will describe the outside edge of the creature, the contour of the creature, and then you can put some more detail inside the creature with much thinner lines. And so I would challenge you to look for other drawings that have this dynamic to them later on. You'll start spotting that, oh yeah, the artist made thicker lines on the outside that helps separate the creature from everything else that might be in the background, versus the much thinner lines which indicate more of a description of the shapes inside the creature. Okay, so the other thing that I want you to notice is that that again, I think a thick and thin line makes a great drawing. Now, not all artists use these. Not even I use that all the time, okay? So, but I wanted you to see what this creature would look like if I had drawn it with a tool that would give me one line thickness. And I want you to see how less interesting that particular drawing is. Okay, so on the left you've got the thick and thin, and so you've got these really bold, dramatic, very interesting lines. And then on the right, it kind of flattens out. It just doesn't have that same pizzazz that the lines of the creature on the left has. And so that's something that again, some artists will use a pen that does one thickness of line, and a lot of the times they'll use more like cross-hatching and other sort of stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with either one. It's really what the artist wants. And for this particular drawing of my T-Rex, I wanted it to have these dramatic thick and thin lines. And so my tool of choice then to do that was a brush. If those young artists in my audience are interested in drawing with a brush, just use this video as a kind of a guide to help you see how that works. And like I said, just start drawing very simply, and don't go into some complicated drawing like this right off the bat. You know, just start drawing some simple lines, just do some practice, get a feel for how the brush works, and then when you kind of get a bit of confidence going, then maybe you can draw some simple things like some circles and some squares and shapes and things. And then when you get more confidence, then you can start going into something more complicated like this. But a brush tool is a lot of fun to use, and I would encourage those of you that want to be artists to start experimenting with things like this that are new, and to kind of stretch your capabilities and your skills, and start practicing with some other tools that you might not be used to. And you can get some very, very dramatic results very, very quickly. But again, just be patient with yourself, as some of these new tools can seem really kind of uncomfortable to start out with, because they work very, very differently from some of the tools that you might be familiar with. So this is Dan Letha for Reasons for Hope, and I thank you for watching this edition of Draw It and Know It. And join me in future editions where we'll talk about other tools and other ways of drawing, and other bits of knowledge from an artist's point of view. So thanks for watching, and have a